What's the major difference between teaching poetry to college students versus high school students?
Well, I had a rather charmed existence as a high school teacher because in a matter of a few years, I ended up being an instructional coach. Half-time is somebody who coaches other teachers, and half-time AP Lang teacher. So I got to work with adults, which was delightful, but I also got to teach the cream of the crop as far as students who were interested in the English language. So what ended up happening is that I just didn't give these kids a choice. When I began teaching AP Lang, I said it was the same time I was studying with David at Lighthouse, and I wanted this book to come out so much. That's when I wrote the grant for Writers in the Schools and started teaching verse forms once a week in my AP classes. So the kids were up for anything because they were kids who wanted to learn no matter what it was. They were the kids who were taking calculus and AP physics and, European history and all the hard courses. So I had these great students and I said, hey, this is what we're going to do. And they said, okay.
Reading is good.
Now, did they all like poetry? No, but they did by the end of that semester. The pushback that I got, interestingly enough, at the high school level was from a few parents who thought their students weren't going to be ready to do well on the AP language test. The scores actually, in fact, went up because learning about verse forms and language and the nuances of meter and how to look at subordinate clauses in a dense piece of poetry and that sort of thing just made their skills sharper. So not only did they end up having a lot of fun writing their own poems, which many of which you see in this book, their AP Lang scores went up. When I got to college, I also had a pretty wonderful bunch of students. It was at a small liberal arts Christian school, and we had maybe any one time about 60 English majors from freshman to senior, but they were the best kids in the school because they were the students who wanted to learn how to think, who wanted to read, who wanted to write. They were not all convinced about verse forms. And I just said, fine, you don't ever have to write in verse again, but you do in this class, and you will understand why, and then you can write whatever you want. And I think about 75% of them really bought into it by the end of the semester. There were always a few students who said, I feel really hemmed in by this. And I said, fine, you're only hemmed in until May. No problem. Then we cut you loose and you do whatever you want to do. So I just didn't give them a choice, but I did it with good humor and they were okay.
Poems, everybody. The lad who reckons himself a poet.
I would say, though, that it was a rousing success. One of my high school students is living in Brooklyn, and she's published a book. That's the only one that I know of. From my college students, there are maybe 5 or 6 that are continuing to write and are actively publishing in good journals. I woke up one morning and opened Autumn Sky Poetry email. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not. Sometimes they're in form, sometimes they're not, but it's an online journal that publishes a poem a day. And I thought, oh, Vitalia Straight, that's my kid. There she is on Autumn Sky. So, I sent her a note, and I keep being delighted with things like that. So if I have 5 or 6 kids from the 10 years that I was there, that seems to me like pretty good odds.